Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today. Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast with Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about freedom. Basically, we're going to talk about, I don't know, like different, what freedom means to us, but also like what you need to do to protect it. What is going on in the world? When has it gone too far? Guys know I'm pretty much like libertarian leading, and I just want government out of my way. But there's a bunch of different things there and different levels of freedom, and what's tolerated and what needs to be stopped by force and what needs to be, just kind of fought against in the ballot box. And maybe we're going to get into some of the ways you could stop it, oppression by force. And we're going to kind of dig deep into the different stuff there and how we can kind of work to preserve freedom and not put our life and liberty at risk. Because a lot of times people think, well, if we got rid of the government, guess what? Another bunch of jackasses will come in and try and rein you down. Sometimes, I guess when we look at Egypt over there, we remember, Mubarak was so freaking bad and they all hated him, right? Isn't that his name? And we were like, oh, that guy's a jackass and we got to get rid of him. He's a tyrant. And now they got rid of him and it turns out they got a tyrant. So, and I guess that's what's kind of happened in Turkey, although I don't think those people really wanted the revolution. I mean, they just got some people worked up and were like, yeah, go out and pretend you're having a revolution. And, I think some of those people thought they were part of the revolution, but I think it may have just been that the guy was like, yeah, go out there, we'll get rid of these guys and then I can take over.
Right.
That ends up happening. And I think you got to be very careful that you don't end up being a pawn in somebody else's game. And that's something to definitely consider, because it's definitely probably not going to end up like, into some blissful utopia. All throughout history, America seems like the only place that's ever really, played out where, you stand up to your oppressor and you end up with a whole lot more freedom on the other side, but think of the blood and what it cost us. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was really, I feel like that was really the responsibility of one person. That was George Washington. He easily could have made himself king of of the United States. He easily could have done that. He had an entire army behind him that supported whatever he did. They were extremely loyal to him. And he could have just declared himself the king and people would have loved it. A lot of people would have loved it.
They would have been happy, yeah.
But he famously said, I didn't defeat George III to become George IV.
Exactly.
He had no interest. And he had no interest in becoming president either, That was kind of thrust upon him. And I think that's, it's really important that we have people in authority that don't want to have the authority, that consider it more of a responsibility than it is a privilege.
And there are so few people out there, I think, that have that kind of humility, that really could lead like that. And how do you find them and really know? I mean, I guess it goes back again. It's that libertarian in me. Ayn Rand always said, that people are consistent and look at their values. And I think that's part of how you judge a man, where she always said, contradictions don't exist. And when you see one path of their life that isn't consistent with the other path of their life, you need to start raising an eyebrow and realize kind of who you're dealing with. And I think like that was, I was a Ted Cruz fan when, he was running in the primary. And then all of a sudden you started seeing these random contradictions, and they wouldn't be in the things he was saying about, politics or the Constitution, but then he'd have some other values that just didn't kind of jive, and they'd kind of raise an eyebrow. And it's so hard to find somebody who's really out there trying to be a decent person and really look up to, whatever, be a true leader and have that kind of ability and some kind of honesty or humility. So you got to be careful what you get. The next thing is kind of, when do you know that, you're not free? You guys have heard me talk about the Cato Institute, and they have their freedom index, and they I guess the most recent one is the Human Freedom Index. Now, they also have freedom of the states and the different stuff there, and you'd be surprised at how this plays out, because they talk about the top 10 places that are free. You're going to kind of laugh. Well, one, you're thinking, oh, America's pretty free, right? Well,
right,
turns
that's number
out
one.
We're not quite number one. We come in somewhere around 13 or 17, 13. No, the United States and Sweden are tied for 17. So, yeah, that's a little rough. But now, mind you, this is 2018. This is not present day, right? 2018.
Right.
So,
and a lot has happened in the last year.
Right. So 10 places. Number one was New Zealand. Number two was Switzerland. And number three, wait for it, Hong Kong. And maybe that's why they're out there fighting. Australia, because people don't want to give up. Australia.
Once people have a taste of it, they don't want to give it up,
Yeah. Whereas Australia is taking
mainland
a turn.
China.
Yeah. Australia's taken a turn for the worse. And then there's Canada, the Netherlands, Denmark, Ireland, UK. UK beats us out. Now, there is a couple of things that mess up the way I would view this list. They include a freedom as access to health care. And, they have a lot of things in there that are a little different than I would necessarily view them. But bottom line, America isn't that free, but it's also not that bad. And it's funny because my perspective, since I moved out of New York and moved down south, I'm like, we got a lot of freedom here and people don't really mess with you and you can kind of do what you want. Whereas in New York, I just felt very closed in and they are messing with me at every turn,
Right.
So
and honestly, in New York State, anybody can have the police knock on their door and be found to be doing something illegal because everything's illegal.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it plays out. And
you have to remember that the government doesn't have any power over the decisions you make. The only power they have is to legislate and enforce those laws. So basically, if you make everything illegal, then you can affect the way people behave and act by enforcing the laws that you see fit at the times you see fit.
And that's
if you disagree with what somebody's doing, then you can just find the law that they're breaking and put them in prison for it.
Exactly.
Go
ahead.
Every law that is passed, that's created, is an affront to freedom. Every law that's passed is a restriction that, that the people are allowed or, not allowed to do.
That's it. And the more and more, like you used to have with, like the Stasi and the, in Russia and the KGB and all this and people snitching on their neighbors and stuff. What the thing is if there's enough laws, which is what Kevin was just getting at here, is if there's enough laws, you're always guilty of something. I think we read that, everybody commits at least one felony a day, whether you realize it or not. There's always something out there. Now, whether these felonies are enforced.
Let me just back that up. You said everybody commits one felony a day. That's on average. I take up like the vast majority of my neighborhood worth of felonies here. So let's just be clear.
You got your street covered.
Yeah, I handle enough felonies every day for 10 or 20 people.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing is you'd have so many laws that, like Kevin said, you could walk into somebody's house and at any time be like, oh, look right here, you guys are in trouble. But you're also seeing a lot of these cities where they're like, you know what, don't enforce all these little laws. But when they have all these laws on the book, at any time they can turn you into the monster. And then they also do it with the fear. The way that, Hitler was really big on demonizing guns. And he would talk about, that he was actually the guy who came up with zero tolerance. And the whole zero tolerance thing would be, well, you're talking about guns and that's, right away, that's bad. And, you guys, you have a shotgun, but, we don't like guns in general. So, it's just a gray area and I don't like it. And by actually having these gray areas, it got people scared and it kept moving them further and further, where all of a sudden you see it with disdain as, somebody having a gun. Oh, yes, they're evil. Because you don't want to be associated.
Right. You don't want to be associated with criminals. Nobody wants to be, nobody wants to be living in the same household as somebody that's breaking the law. The cops could come in anytime and guilt by association. You're there and they have something illegal. That's also your problem now.
Right, exactly. And so, or your friend, like you said, you're out at the park and your friend and she has a gun in her purse and, oh my God, look at you. You're hanging out with whatever. Now, and I feel like in America, we've really gotten to where that fear plays out in a big part of society. Mm-hmm. Now, that's kind of what I was talking about is now that I'm down south, that's ridiculous and nobody has that fear and whatever. But you're up in New York and you talk about guns and it's like, oh, that guy mentioned he has a gun at the party and oh my God. And it's, it's really ridiculous, how you go over the top with that.
Yeah, I remember this is just a side note, kind of an illustration with that. I remember they were opening up an adult bookstore in my town, and a bunch of people got together trying to keep it out. And what they finally settled on, which finally worked, is they went out there to the adult bookstore with video cameras and just recorded everybody that got out of their car and went inside there. And people were so embarrassed about it that nobody wanted to go there anymore because they're being recorded going in and out of a porn shop, and nobody wants to be known as the neighborhood pervert. And they ended up having to close up because of that. If you're scared to do things, you're going to be hesitant to object if you feel like you're going to be the one on the line. Nobody wants to be known for civil disobedience, especially when you're out there protesting and they've got facial recognition cameras up and they're just recording everybody who's out there protesting. Whatever it is you're protesting against, if you break the law or somebody else breaks the law, they've got your face on camera. They know who you are. They'll match it up with your driver's license and come over to your address and pick you up. So, are you going to really be the one that's out there protesting if the police will knock on your door and shoot your dog the next day?
Right. And then they come over to your house. And I have some of those examples of felonies you might be committing and not realize.
All right.
And they're like, wait, didn't a week ago you find out that your daughter had marijuana and you flushed it down the toilet? Guess what? You committed a felony of obstruction of justice.
Right. Destroying evidence. Man, that is
destroying evidence. Oh, danger.
You should be disgusted with yourself.
In 2001, this guy ordered freaking lobster tails. And it turns out they were the wrong size, where they were too small, where they became illegal.
Okay.
He didn't order, can you send me two small illegal lobster tails?
Yeah.
That wasn't actually his plan. But they were in clear plastic bags. And this guy ended up getting sentenced to 8 years in jail.
For buying lobster tail.
For buying lobster tails online. The guy, if you want to look it up, his name was Robert Blandford. I believe they also went after his wife, or Diane Hahn, and the 3 American seafood dealers, as well as the guy who
bought them,
who bought the lobster, all went down. So you look into that.
I mean, really, that sort of behavior disgusts me. Who is out there getting lobster tails that are a centimeter too short? That is disgusting behavior.
Now, how about this? There's a statute in the from the Supreme Court. It implies bribes and kickbacks, but if you get into it, technically under bribes and kickbacks, in the wording from the Supreme Court, if you call in sick and you're a salaried employee and you're lying about it, that's a bribe and a kickback from a company.
Nice.
See? All right. Felony
right there.
All right. There's a automobile racer, Bobby Unser. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, but convicted of a federal crime and sentenced to 6 months in prison because he got lost in a blizzard in Colorado for 2 days while snowmobiling and was found guilty of unlawful operation of a snowmobile in a national forest area. See? He got lost. He drove in the woods. And damn it if he wasn't operating a motor vehicle in a,
Yep.
I don't know. If you email your family and friends and tell them not to use, all right, here they're saying use the service of your company. So here's what happened. In 2000, Brett McDaniel served 16 months in prison after he alerted customers of his old company, Tornado Development, about a software problem that was never fixed. He explained that the company's email system had a flaw that could allow an attacker to gain access to the user's email records. The prosecutors argued that he damaged the company by being a whistleblower and was convicted of a felony. So, see, danger. Here's a good one that actually came into play a little while ago, but I did do the appropriate thing, but I could have gone the other way. If you tell a park ranger that you cleaned up your picnic area and you didn't.
Ooh, lying to a federal officer.
See there? See what you did? This guy was sentenced in U.S. District Court to a year in prison for lying to an FBI agent when he denied traveling to Afghanistan. The transcript suggests that Mantasser was not purposely trying to deceive interrogators, but rather had doubts of his original answers, and he felt he needed advice from legal counsel, to the point where here is the wording that got him in. I don't know. Yeah, that one was a miss. I don't know what happened there. I guess I should have done better notes, but we'll just apologize and move on. All right. Just accept it that Chuck's screwed up a little bit there, and I'll take the hit. That was Chuck. You can blame me. I always want to blame Kevin, but
it's not always my fault.
My point is, I was going to say, the point is, once there's so many laws, if you're doing anything, no, they're not coming out just to harass you nonstop. But if you speak out, or if you're the guy saying, hey, I have this great podcast, and I'm going to tell you to be careful of your government and not let them overstep on you. And they're like, whoa.
Whoa, wait a minute. It looks like you're the lobster tail in your freezer is a centimeter.
Exactly, and then all of a sudden you're a little shady. So that's what I'm getting at. So you guys got to be careful. Now, there are ways to kind of stand up to government. Is that a thing, Kevin? Now, this obviously we're talking about maybe our brothers over in Hong Kong, or maybe you're in Turkey, maybe you're in Egypt. Maybe there's
you're in Iran.
Going wrong in your world. Yeah, maybe you're in Iran, and maybe you need to find a way to maybe stick it to the man when they're kind of coming down on you a little bit hard.
Right.
Well, there are some.
Go ahead.
There are some ways that you might be able to do that. And, the government is afraid of an informed populace.
Right. That's really the most dangerous thing. And you see that with governments that are trying to control their population, where they have censorship on certain topics. You can't discuss certain things. You can't research certain things. And, it's because being informed makes you dangerous.
Yes, that's why. I mean, when you think of our Bill of Rights, you're like, oh, well, the Second Amendment, that's the way that, we're free, right? But freedom of speech, there's a reason it's number one.
Right. And that's really the most important thing. If, and I hear people, this is actually something that pissed me off earlier this year. Let's get into this for a second. They had some protest down in Charlottesville. I'm sure you remember that, with the tiki torches and anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic chants and things like that. And my son was in class, and his teacher was talking about freedom of speech, and should certain freedoms of speech be allowed, like hate speech. Should hate speech be allowed? I mean, it's really disruptive and terrible for the communities that they're going on in. It's terrible for minorities.
What if the little children heard it?
Exactly. So I mean, he was advocating banning hate speech, which is well and good until you think about who it is that's actually deciding what hate speech is. Anything can be considered hate speech if it's if it's decided by the wrong person. And there's nobody in this country, I don't give a fuck who you are, there is nobody in this country that is competent enough to decide what speech is okay and what speech is not okay. And anytime you start down that road, I'm sure in the 1950s, it was probably hate speech to suggest that it was okay for a white man and a black woman, or vice versa, to be married together and have children together. That's disgusting behavior. And, if you had banned that sort of speech, then the civil rights movement would have been set back, 40 years. But we can't, when you start getting into the weeds with shit like that, you start deciding what is okay to say and what is not okay to say. Then you start really degrading what the conversation of the world is. And if you feel like you're anti-racist, but you can't defend that position against what I've only seen as incompetent, incoherent ramblings by racists, if you can't defend that position, then you need to go back to fucking school and read some books. That's not the racist fault. That's your fault. That's, and that's what it comes down to, being informed and knowledgeable and having a set of beliefs that you can back up and you can defend. That's not the racist's fault. That's your fault.
Yeah. No, that's it. I mean, you really need to understand freedom if you're going to protect it. And understand your values and what you want, what the world should be. And that's, people get so caught up in, well, I want things and you can't tell me what to do. Well, yeah, fuck you, anarchy, I get it, but that's not, there's a reason behind it. And guess what? If you're really free, you're responsible for yourself.
Right. And that's dangerous, man.
That's where everyone kind of falls apart on that. Freedom comes with responsibility, and not, I mean, yeah, think responsibility to take care of yourself, to handle things, to do things the right way.
Right.
And, to take care of your family, to take care of your obligations. And that's where it all comes down. And you need to, make sure that, you're able to take care of your own before you go trying to destroy, the whole system and everything else. And,
Right.
they always say, be careful what you wish for, right? So that's where you get into danger there.
Right. Well, I feel like Sam Adams, I can ramble on, but Sam Adams really had the perfect quote about that. He said, if you love wealth greater than liberty, the tranquility of servitude greater than the animated contest for freedom, go home from us in peace. We seek not your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen.
Nice.
That to me is a very clear-cut way. The idea that safety is more important than freedom. And Chuck says he's a libertarian, and I used to think of myself as a libertarian also. But the more I think about it, I'm really an anarchist. I feel like I should be having shootouts on my way to work every day. But I get
you're not having shootouts on the way to work every day.
No, I mean I feel like I get outvoted all the time, and people feel like stray bullets hitting innocent bystanders are an issue. I feel like there aren't enough stray bullets in my life.
Yeah.
Everyone, right. I feel like a 9mm round should be coming through my window every couple of weeks. And nothing. I get nothing.
Have you considered employment at UPS?
There you go. All you got to do, man. All you got to do to get shot 18, 20 times.
Fuck.
Guy for UPS.
Oh, my God. That's the kind of thing. I mean, once you get, they always, it's the jackbooted thugs, right? Isn't that what you anarchists are always saying?
Yep.
That's the thing, They get out there and man, what the hell goes through somebody's head? Well, I'm a policeman, so I can just shoot at anything and whatever with no consequences. I mean, what kind of training puts like 19 guys where they're like, hey, we should just all open fire in the middle of traffic and hide behind civilian cars with people in them?
With people in them. Right. They're hiding. They were hiding in cars that had citizens sitting in them and shooting over the roof and over the hood.
Yeah.
And then acting like the guy in the car is an asshole because he wasn't ducking fast enough.
Right. That's their problem.
Right.
Yeah, that's a problem. I don't know. You'll have to search that out in Florida if you guys don't know what we're talking about. You maybe don't have a Facebook account if you don't know what we're talking about or haven't turned on the news. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But that's the kind of thing. It's just the brazen power of, well, we're in charge, so do what you say, and if you get injured in there, that's collateral damage. That's not how the world should work.
That was it was the criminal's fault that I shot you.
Right.
And the criminal will go to jail for it too.
Yeah.
I remember
exactly.
Not too long ago, there was a shootout in New York City. This is probably about 4 years back. There was a guy that was having a schizophrenic break. And he was running in and out of traffic and being disruptive, screaming and yelling. The cops showed up and shot at him. They completely missed. The guy was unarmed, first off. You know what I mean? If you're a cop, you should be able to tackle somebody and handle business.
And what's he doing running in traffic aside of risking hurting himself? I mean...
Right. He really
he might do some damage to the car, but that's not worth taking somebody's life,
Right. And so they shot at him and missed him 19 times. Yeah, they did, however, manage to shoot 2 other people that were just standing on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And the guy that had the schizophrenic break went to prison because he murdered those 2 people.
Right.
Even though he did not have a gun. And this is the type of shit that I'm talking about. About personal freedom. You're just minding your own fucking business and you get shot, but it's somebody else's fault. It's not the government's fault that they shot you. It's the criminal's fault that didn't do anything. the guy was having a health crisis is really what it comes down to.
Right.
And two other people got shot.
The police are there to protect and serve, right? So they were helping him through his health crisis.
Right. He was having a schizophrenic break where he felt like the government was after him and trying to get him. And then the government showed up and started shooting guns at him. That didn't fix the situation.
No, this is why we need more government, so we can take care of the health problems that come up. If we had more people out there telling us what to do and protecting us, they could enforce the shit out of the bad stuff.
Right, like that UPS driver had a health crisis of being alive and being in front of the gunman. Right.
And it's not like, the thing is, you couldn't have just waited him out. The UPS truck stopped in traffic. They're not going anywhere. You know, you could just be like, all right, let's get these people out of here. Let's make the world a better place. Instead, let's just freak out and panic,
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, to each his own.
In Hong Kong, they're going through some issues like this themselves right now.
All right.
Let's talk about that real quick.
They're not quite the most freedom. Number 3 on the freedom at the moment.
No, they had some concerns because the federal government wanted to extradite criminals to China so that they could be tried and imprisoned there.
Right.
Now, I feel like we all believe that it's fair that our peers are the ones to judge what we do wrong and what we do right, not outside forces. And we have a system of government that's set up in that way that, our peers are the ones that try us in courts and things like that. And, there's really a big deal. A lot of people don't see that. But, there's things like jury nullification, which, you can get, charged with a crime that is unjust and go to court over it. And you could have clearly broken a law that was unjust, and the jury can find you not guilty. Basically, what's happening is the jury is nullifying that law. That's the citizens standing up for themselves and protecting their own rights and protecting the rights of their neighbors.
Right.
And when you start exporting law to a different set of people, you find yourself in the situation that they're in Hong Kong. And, they're out there protesting peacefully. And I know a lot of you are saying it's not peaceful. They're doing, this, they're doing that. They're attacking cops. They're, maybe look into this stuff for yourself, because China is really pushing that. China is really pushing the idea that these people are rioters. They're criminals. And really, they're only fighting for their own freedoms. So far, 4,491 people have been arrested in those protests. What happened to those people? Where are they at now? Nobody really knows. Maybe they're dead. Maybe they're alive. People are killing themselves where they're jumping off of buildings after they've been beaten to death. Like that's a suicide. The cops are just like, yeah, nah, it's dead. We're not going to investigate that. Yeah, he was beaten to death with batons before he fell off of that building, but, whatever. And, they've been pushing more and more strong-arm tactics on these protesters. Clearly, they have video of agent provocateurs, which are police officers that dress up as protesters and then go into the protests and start rioting and breaking windows and throwing bricks. And what they've been settling on now lately is what they call kettling. What kettling is you get a massive force of police out, and you go in and you organize everybody to start on different streets, and you move in closer and closer with tear gas and rubber bullets and move people into a smaller and smaller location until you can corral them all into a tight place where they can't escape, they can't move, they can't do anything. And then anytime somebody tries to break out, you grab them, arrest them, and then move the barricades in further. And basically what you're doing is forcing these people to become criminals so that you can arrest them.
And that's the thing is, a government can get out of hand. A government can get out of control. And like I said, you have to understand what kind of outcome and what kind of thing you're looking for. But you also don't want to get pushed into a box where you can't defend yourself. And that's kind of the perfect analogy right there of what happens. They talk about, well, you give up this gun or you give up this right because, we don't need machine guns. We don't need, all these different things. But you keep getting more and more taken away from you. And, well, we don't need hate speech because, I can get behind that. Well, all right. Yeah, it's wrong if I talk about how to make explosives on the internet because, I don't want bad people to find out that information. So I'll give up that right, that freedom I'll give away. And then, well, I don't want to give people ideas of how they might, start a revolution or how they might disrupt their government or how they could disrupt the infrastructure in society. Well, because that is dangerous and could end bad. But you basically, by giving up all these freedoms and rights, you're closing that box in on yourselves. They're moving the barricades in on you just a little tighter and tighter until you're so confined that all of a sudden you're in a train car being headed off to a freaking concentration camp or, detention center.
Right. And you're packed in there so tight that you can't get out. And if you can't get out, right. If you do get out, then you're obviously a criminal.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing of how it works is they keep closing the box. And those are the freedoms we keep fighting for here in America that we try and hang on to. That's why, people say, oh, well, when it's time to hide your guns, it's time to use them. Because these are people where they've decided that the box is getting a little too tight, that once you get to the point where you have no freedom left, you won't be able to defend yourselves. You won't be able to organize. You won't have a knowledgeable populace who can protect themselves. And this is what you need to be aware of. And you need to be constantly fighting to keep the rights and to allow people to stay knowledgeable, stay informed, and you need to utilize your rights. And what I mean by that is you actually have to go out and learn the information and understand stuff and spend some time thinking about what's important to you and your family and your friends and people you care about. Decide what's important and find ways to protect it. Because if you keep your head in the sand and you allow it to, keep closing in on you, you're going to find that it's too late and you're being rounded up and you're not going to have a choice. And you're thinking, oh, well, I remember they used to say never again, but it keeps happening actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And that brings up something I think is kind of funny. I was talking to my son yesterday and somehow the topic of making your own explosives at home came up. I don't know. Sure. I don't know why that comes up in my house. That's not the first time it's come up. But I was telling him how to make a pipe bomb.
Oh, and, logically.
He said, Dad, why do you know how to make a pipe bomb? And the real question is, why doesn't everybody know how to make a pipe bomb?
Exactly.
He took shop last year. And I said, with the things that are in that classroom, you can make your own gun. And that shocked him. But, the truth is, the secret's out. Guns aren't hard to make. You can build them at home. You can get blocks of steel and aluminum and make your own gun.
So you're saying if I had some black pipe and some shotgun rounds?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my Lord.
You'd be all set.
That's a disturbing world we live in. I'm a little frightened.
Well, I mean, the thing is that the more the government hides information, the more things that are against the law to talk about, the less dangerous the population is and the less the government has to fear the population. The governments should be afraid of people. People should not be afraid of the governments.
That sounds accurate. But that's what we got to say about that. That's what I would say. You got anything more you want to add on that one? I mean, I kind of feel like we laid it down, and I don't want to. I don't want to taint the goodness.
Yeah, and I just one last thing. I was talking to a friend of mine who is involved in he's involved in a local government as far as operating water systems and power systems and making sure roads are paved and that sort of stuff. That's the most dangerous person in the world. The person that knows how your city operates is the person that knows how to shut down the city. So when you get down to it, the more competent a person is, the more freedom he has.
All day. And that's really where self-reliance comes in. I mean, that's why you're a prepper, right? Is because the more you can take care of yourself, the less they can take away from you. Right. If you're dependent on your government for your health care, or even if you're dependent on this infrastructure for your health care, then you're dependent on society and people can take things away from you. If you know how to treat your own wounds and take care of yourself, then, maybe you have some antibiotics stored up. Maybe you have some stuff that, you can take care of yourself. That's a different level of freedom. Now, am I going to treat cancer for, my kid that gets sick and has leukemia? No, it's not going to happen. But the more prepared and the more knowledgeable you are, the more independent you are and the freer you are. If you are growing your own food, have your own food right there on your property, then you're less dependent on the infrastructure and the supplies. You're not dependent on the government's money. You're not dependent on, what they allow you to keep, what they don't allow you to keep as far as your income. Obviously, they can outlaw you from growing food on your land, and that's happened in the world. That's happened throughout history. And, if you want to understand, the Ukraine and how Russia, really screwed those guys, the big famines and stuff that they had, it wasn't God that did it to them. It was an oppressive government, and that's the thing. So if you can protect your family, if you can feed your family, if you can shelter your family, if you can provide water for your family, if you can take care of your family's health needs, those are levels of freedom that you're giving yourself. I don't see how you can love freedom and not be a prepper. If you're not self-reliant, you're not free. And obviously, we just keep getting closer and closer to the ideal. It's not that any of us are completely free. And even if you're living, in the woods completely, I guess maybe you're free, but really somebody can come take that land from you. Then how secure are you? What's your defensive position beyond that point? But, we just want to get as close to true freedom as you can. And that's what's going to make the world a better place.
Amen, brother.
All right, we can go with that. So that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
The Survival and Basic Badass Podcast is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today. Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.